What's going on, y'all, boy? Just speak up, like, talk at you.
Okay. So I'm Lauren McCaskill. I'm here with Amethyst Ganaway, the famous Gullah chef who has been doing much with the South Carolina State Museum. We're here with the Bloodline doing her interview. So first I want to start off with a little bit of background about yourself. As a South Carolina-born Gullah Geechie chef and cultural historian, when people hear your name, what do you hope they understand about the work you do?
Ooh, that's a good one. I hope that they understand that my work is centered on being able to tell true stories about Black culture across the state, but honestly across the diaspora as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that when people hear my name, that they realize that there are, not to be like, what's the word, like, trendy words right now, but not to be like a, safe space. I hope that people realize they have a safe space to authentically tell their stories, the stories of the people around them, their lives, and that their stories matter.
Right. I love that. So I was doing a little bit of my research and I see that you reference a lot the women in your background. So I wanted to make sure that we touched on that and going back to telling, our truths and, our experiences of what we've been through. We know that DNA does carry memory. So what I would like to know is how did the women and elders in your life teach you through food, not just with recipes, but with presence? Like, how did they teach you?
I think that, so one thing I always bring up to my family is that I was my grandmother's first grandchild. And then I was, out of all of her grandchildren and most of my cousins, I'm the only one that met and remembers. I'm the only one that met our great-grandmother too, but also the fact that I still remember her. So I always feel like food has been at the center, like literally of our table, but of our life as well. So like no matter where people go in our family, food is the one thing that always binds us. Mm-hmm. And my grandmother was the person who learned how to cook from her mother. The rest of the family didn't really learn, out of her siblings. So even when my grand aunts and uncles passed, my grandmother was the person in the family that made them their last meals, right? Because they wanted that food that their mom used to make, and she was the only one who could do that. So now her grandchildren are the only ones that have kind of these recipes that have been passed down. So I do feel like it's a way that my direct lineage contacts me, I guess, or speaks through. And I personally believe that it does flow even further back into the people that we don't know their names of, right? But I know that we carry a bloodline with them. So they've along the way through food taught me so many lessons about life, and not just about cooking, like you said, not just recipes, but how I can maneuver throughout this world and the power that food can hold in keeping memory and creating new memories.
Yes, beautiful. So, speaking on the tone of memories, what is the earliest food memory that still lives in your body?
Okay. My granny always tells the story, and I partially actually do remember this. So I used to live in, I can't remember if we were living in West Ashley or James Island in Charleston. And I remember like distinctly my grandma putting me up, sitting up on the counter, and I couldn't have been no more than 2, maybe 2-3 years, or probably about closer to 2 or 3. And she's cooking something, I don't remember, but I was always there. If she was cooking something, I was right next to her. Like throughout my whole life, I'm still that same way. But she always talks about how somehow I got off that counter. Mind you, now I'm like 2 years old. I'm a toddler. And she's like, I don't know how you got down. To this day, she was like, I don't know how you got down. What spirit, whatever was in the kitchen with us, but somehow I got down. So that's probably my earliest like kitchen memory, but that still like revolves around food. And then I would say too, like being the kid, again, like I said, at my grandmother's side, and we make our banana pudding from scratch. So our pudding from scratch, like we don't use nothing else, right? Besides our Nella wafers. But like a rite of passage in our family is being the person that has to stand at the stove and stir the custard and pudding for like an hour. So like as a kid, that was that was a thing that I had to learn to do. And then I would also say, probably another earliest one is anytime my granny would make like greens, or she'd make like a potato salad, something like that needed a boiled egg. She always put an extra egg in the pot for me to eat, and she always knew to put a little extra smoked meat in the pot because I'm going to go in there and steal meat out of the pot. So those are probably my earliest.
Right. So do you feel that memory changes the way that something tastes? Like,
I do, and we're kind of experiencing a little bit of that in my family right now. So going specifically with the Aspen, if you don't mind, we're doing a video right here. If you can go around the other way, thank you. Okay, ask a question one time.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Do you feel that memory changes the way something tastes?
Yes. Okay, so I was talking about the banana pudding. I have an aunt who swears up and down my great grandmama used to put sweetened condensed milk.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my granny and the whole family be like, no, I don't understand why you making this up.
Right.
Like, we don't use my great granny never used that. But I do think like she has a memory. She says she has a memory of that, and then but I have a completely different memory, and everybody else has a completely different memory. So I do think that because of our lived experiences, those things can change the memory and the taste of certain things that we have. But I think at the core, the spirit is still the same.
Yes, I agree. It's funny that you say that because during Thanksgiving, my grandmother's recipes had found their way to me, and no one believed that it was going to be me. But like you, I was in the kitchen a lot. And her secret ingredient to her yams was rum, and no one believed me. Yeah. And I was like, no, I was in the kitchen.
I promise you. I'm telling you for a fact.
Right, like that's it. But is there a dish specifically that feels like an ancestor speaking?
I would say, I mean, rice always feels like that when I wash rice, when I cook rice. And somebody yesterday asked me, do I see if there's...
What in the world? That is insane.
I'm crying because they showed me a tailor right behind them too.
You would think we were in New York with all of that.
Why is and they like all Sunday.
Right.
My name is Selena, known as the Self-Care Snob. I write and edit for the Bloodline Tribune, an ancestrally rooted publication based in South Carolina that centers Black diasporic creativity, storytelling, and artistry. This month, we're opening our doors a little wider. We've launched a submissions call dedicated to Black women artists and writers, inviting you into a world where imagination meets inheritance. The theme is Black fairies. Think lineage with wings. Think magic that remembers where it came from. I'll be personally reviewing each submission alongside members of our team, and I'm truly looking forward to experiencing the depth, the beauty, and the originality that comes through. If you or someone you know feels called to share their Black fairy story, visit thebloodline743.com and head to the submissions tab.
Okay, is there a dish that feels like an ancestor speaking?
Okay, I was talking about rice. Yes. I think washing and cooking rice is probably the most like ancestral thing. Just the process of it. It's very meditative. Someone yesterday asked me, is there a dish that I feel like is, or if I feel like cooking is spiritual, and I said absolutely. Yes. And washing rice is that most spiritual thing. Just because you know that people have been doing this since, the beginning of time, right. Essentially. And that kind of process of continuing that. Right. Feels really, really magical.
Carolina rice is very important to the Gullah culture, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
So when you cook, whose memory are you carrying? Do you feel like it's a culmination of your ancestors?
I do. I feel like it's a culmination of my ancestors, but not just that. I think also a culmination of, again, my experiences, because I also have learned from my friends, from my peers. So I think like in that process, you're creating new memories, but while still honoring the past ones. So just as much as I feel like some of these things, especially like cooking rice, are ancestral, I also know, like, I feel bonded by that tie that also my friends' ancestors were doing the same thing, right? And like now again, like we're learning how to do, like we learned how to do these things, and now we're able to kind of put our own twist and spin on them. So I feel like I'm honoring the past, but also the present.
I love that. So was there a specific moment when you consciously decided to reclaim or center your Gullah identity in your work, or was that just something that was always there?
I think it's a little bit of both. There's a point in my like professional career when I realized I was living out I think really honestly this started when I was living in Georgia, way after college, all of that, and I'm working in a Southern restaurant, and I'm realizing like these people are in South Georgia, but they've never heard of Gullah Geechie culture.
Right.
They always make fun of how I talk, you know, and like little things like that you get to teach people about. But working in a restaurant, you realize that like, oh, y'all really have no like y'all think all of these recipes are just from y'all. Right. And it's like you have no idea about the history of these things, and we're literally a state line apart. Like y'all right there. Right. I was living in Valdosta, Georgia, so it's like you got Jacksonville, and not even a 4-hour away. You can go to any of the sea islands. Like it's not far, but the fact that people are just like that culturally disconnected, I feel like Black and white people. And then I think in my personal career, I realized, like in my personal growth, that like I don't necessarily consider myself a Gullah Geechie chef that just does Gullah food, right? But of course, that's going to always be the through line in all of the work. That is the baseline for all of the work that I do. Right. BJ Dennis told me like a couple years ago that our lived experiences are valuable, and that does make us an expert in those things. And so there's no way I could never be able to remove that from anything I do. Even if I was going to do Asian culture, you know, cuisine or something like that, I wouldn't be able to not see those parallels and tie in our culture with it too.
Right. I know you said that you cook and you learn from your friends. So would you think that the Gullah people, like we carry West and Central African like lineage and tradition and tastes and culture. So would you say that you found that across the diaspora in cooking, in food? Like, is there something that specifically?
I mean, I think so. I mean, we see diaspora wars every day on the internet. You know, we see somebody was hard down arguing about just like how much Black Americans hate the Caribbeans and hate Africans, and I'm just like, but the thing they'll do is they'll always throw in Gullah Geechie people first and be like, no, but we do know our roots, we do know our culture, and I love that. But at the same time, too, I would hope that people are able to see again that through line across the diaspora of like, yes, we have a very special, unique culture because of what happened to us, but that doesn't exclude if you live in the Mississippi Delta, if you live in, you know, southern Texas, the Gulf or whatever, like all of us have connections still to West and Central Africa. All of, you know, and our roots and the things that we say. When I hear people say the word tote, and I'm like, you don't even realize where that come from, right? Or like there's every other month there's always an argument about gumbo. And somebody was arguing the other day about it that and this is a person from Louisiana. Show me where gumbo is connected to West Africa, and everybody's online is like, there's no way you grew up in Louisiana and you don't know what even the word gumbo is and where that comes from, right? So I think that there's a big cultural disconnect in a lot of ways, but it absolutely runs throughout the entire diaspora. The things that we eat, the way that we speak, the dances that we do, it's all there.
Right, it's all connected. So you kind of already touched on the next question I was going to ask about continuity between West African traditions and Gullah kitchens and the diaspora. So what I kind of want to delve into is, does cooking ever feel like a conversation across time?
Oh, absolutely. Like Sarah Days has said, time is not linear. I don't think that I think everything is just intrinsically connected regardless. But I would say that it's definitely a way to be able to contact the past, but also reach your future self.
I love that, like evolving through that process. I love that. So what do you feel happens when African roots are erased or uncredited in the culinary arts? Because we know that happens often where our history just kind of disappears out of, you know, recipe books. Somebody else credits the name to them. So how does naming those connections shift that power dynamic?
I mean, we're in a reckoning right now where I think people are viewing African food in a better light, in a better light than it's ever really been before. But like you said, like we were just talking about, there's this really big diaspora war that constantly happens. But I do think we're in a space of change now where people have the ability, they have the resources to see the connections, and could be embracing all of it. And then when it comes to like the culinary profession, particularly, I think this year might have been the best year of seeing how many Black talented chefs got Michelin stars or Michelin recognition, got James Beard nominations, and they're not doing, and they're doing Black food, West African food, Southern food, or whatever. But I do also have to call out the fact that there's still a really big lack of representation when it comes to Black Southern food. There's still a lot of misconceptions about it. And I feel similarly when it comes to a lot of African cuisines, where the first thing you automatically think of when they're like, I don't want to eat none of that food from Africa. And it's like, you kind of already do.
Right. You just don't realize
you know
it.
what I mean? But I when we have that disconnect in that way, it just makes it easy for people to want to have diaspora wars, and it makes it harder to honor and respect and place Black food on the same tier as other cultures' foods. But I do see some of that starting to change.
Right. I agree. You've spoken about food as being a political tool. So what does that mean in the context of Gullah culture?
Well, we kind of touched on this a little bit last night at the panel with freedom farming and being able to use farming and aquaculture as means of liberation, of reclaiming these ancestral practices. Like when it comes to food, I tell people the same thing as when it comes to any of this. It's like this is stuff people have been doing the entire time they've been a civilization. Like this is not anything necessarily new. But I think especially for Gullah Geechie people, it is liberating to be able to reclaim and be stewards of the land and the waters that your ancestors were forced to tend here. But before that, they had a beautiful connection and relationship with the land and with the water. And I think that we're again in this space of being able to reclaim that with pride. But now it's a bigger battle of having to fight against the bigger powers that be. Versus, I mean, and again, I kind of touched on this last night. There is static between us as a people, but I think that these sorts of ancestral practices, whether it be cooking, whether it be music, whether it be art, are our way of kind of reclaiming that. And I kind of see us in a second movement right now of activism and Black pride, right? And Black power. I'm seeing another kind of transformation of this happening right now. And it's a beautiful thing to witness in our day and age, but it's also a sad thing to have to be a part of, because it's like, why are we still having to do this? But I think for Gullah Geechie people especially, it can be extremely powerful. Again, when people talk about this diaspora wars, Gullah Geechie people are the ones that get thrown in the conversation first. So I think that if we are being set as the standard and people see us doing these things, they would be more open to doing it themselves wherever they are.
Right. So you spoke about land and access to water last night as well. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So how do land, water, and access to it shape what survives in a culture's culinary arts?
If you are in the culinary field and you do not have a direct connection with any of those things we just mentioned, then you should be in a different field. And I see it all the time, and especially bigger cities. Chefs don't want to go and meet the farmers. They don't want to go out and meet the fishermen. They'd rather just order, the frozen shrimp that's coming from China or whatever else. So, we see that, and it gets heralded, especially for white male chefs, that we're the ones that created this farm to table movement. And it's like, no, you aren't. So yeah, there's it's an interesting place to be in the culinary field right now.
Right. So when we talk about farm to table trends, how often are Black culture and histories acknowledged?
Not often. Not often enough. I mean, I think the conversation starts and ends usually with enslavement. That's where people are. I mean, they're kind of starting to see what that impact was, but it's still very far off from people being able to really understand what all that means and what that looks like.
Right. So I want to get a little bit more into intention and what your intention is when you're cooking. And do you see cooking becoming an act of resistance, and when?
I mean, food has always been a means of resistance for Black people. For me, cooking is liberating in many ways. Is one of my ways to calm my anxiety or whatever I have going on. I go and I cook. I go and I clean. Like I really am one of those types of people. That's a good question.
You're good. So when you cook Gullah food, what is your intention?
I think my intention is to, again, honor our past, and to tell stories authentically, whatever authentically could mean in a situation, because everybody does something different, right? But I think staying true to that authenticity for myself and the culture I grew up with is the most intentional thing I can do.
I love that. I love that. And there's always going to be one common denominator across the entire diaspora, right? And food will always bring us together. You know, one thing that we all know is that Black people love seasoning. Like, we're going to make sure our food is seasoned. Like, we're going to make sure that we have those tastes and, you know, keep everything together that way. All right. So let's go into centering you a little bit more as a historian and storyteller, because storytelling is very important to the Gullah culture. So what story are you telling through culinary arts?
The story of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Black people in the South, specifically.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, in these areas that people just don't respect, that they don't give acknowledgement to. I'm waiting for the day when I win my James Beard Award and I can go on stage and just tell people South still got something to say. We still got something to say. Y'all still don't want to listen to us, but we're going to keep saying it until y'all finally do hear us and recognize us. So I would say,
Yeah. I love it. So why is storytelling so essential to preserving Gullah culture?
I mean, it's been a part of our culture from the beginning. Being a griot has always been an esteemed position. Whether you're called a professor, whether you're called a storyteller, whether you are in West Africa and have that specific griot that's in your village or in your town or in your neighborhood or whatever. Essentially, we are such an oral community. You have to have it. You have to have storytelling be a part of it. But it's also important to have storytelling that runs through food, because I've had people's food who do not have a story, and you can taste and tell the difference. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, people who don't have a connection to what they're doing.
Right.
You can definitely taste the difference in it. So.
Right. Like, you can tell when something was cooked with love and intention and what that intention is. Like, when I make angry banana bread.
Exactly.
You can feel that. You can taste it, right?
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a deep question, but I want to make sure we touch on it. How do you balance honoring ancestral trauma without reducing the culinary arts to suffering?
And so I purposely, intentionally try not to do that. Like, as I do research and I talk to people, like, those traumatizing things are going to come up, and there's no way to bypass that. And you have to sit in it, you have to acknowledge it, and you have to get angry. You know, I get more angry than I feel sad, I think, when I'm having to be in those spaces. I want people to still feel all of those emotions. You should feel upset. You should feel angry. Like, these things happen, but you have to find pride in that too. Mm-hmm. When I think about who we are as a people and as a culture, we have endured. Now, should we have always had to endure? Mm-hmm. No. We should be able to just live and just be. Right. But you have to find a sense of pride in the culture and in the work that you do, in honoring and remembering where these ingredients came from, who grew these ingredients, why it was important to them, so that you can, again, continue to tell those stories authentically, because it's really easy right now to skew information into a way that's only going to profit in, like, one or two situations that have nothing to do with us. Right. But it is very hard, and I feel like it's easier in my personal life to express the joy through food necessarily than the trauma. Yes. But when if I have an event and we're using something like Carolina Gold Rice, there's going to be a lot of people in that room who don't understand what Carolina Gold Rice is. Right. And even our own people who don't know what that is anymore. Right. So you have to still you got to tell the full story to be able to get to the point of enjoying what's on your plate. Right.
I agree. And how do you hope others will think differently about Southern food after this conversation?
I want people to stop like denigrating our food into just scraps and poverty and again trauma. Like, no, these are things that we've been doing again since the beginning of time. This ain't new. Like, we really is. We're not new to this. We really is true to this.
Right.
But this is something I like struggle with now as a writer and as a chef of like, when are people gonna really take us seriously? Me and another chef last night were just talking about how you have Michelin stars now in the South. Nobody got more than 1 star. I don't think there might have been 1 or 2 Black restaurants that got recognition. I don't think there was any. No, there's a couple, like maybe New Orleans and stuff like that got a star. Right. But there's very few in between. So again, that goes back to show who are y'all saying is representing the South? Because it's not the people that are the majority in this area. Right. Right. And then I also want people throughout our own diaspora, Black American diaspora, who are not from the South, to remember that your roots are still in the South. Very few of y'all had parents that immigrated here. And like your ties are always going to come back to us. It's always going to come back to the South. So when you talk down on Southerners and Southern food, you're talking down on yourself and you're talking down on your own ancestors because they were not coming through New York City. Right. You know, they weren't coming from LA. Y'all
they weren't coming from Jersey like me.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, when people disrespect us, they disrespect themselves. Right. But I would say, trying to leave this thing in your life. Right. I would say the most important thing is to find pride in our food ways and find pride in our culture. Right. Because without us, there is no everybody else. There is no everybody else.
There is no that term that they created, African American, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Without Southern everything, pretty much.
And I'm going to add too, I want us to be okay with being Black and being from the South. Yes. It's okay to be African American. You are not indigenous to this land. You are from, your people is from Africa, and that is perfectly fine and beautiful, and we should embrace that instead of trying to claim these false claims about who we are and what we are as a people. Like, no.
Exactly. We're African. We're all African peoples, as Marcus Garvey stood on. So this is my last question because I know we got to take some pictures too. But what does it mean when a dish survives an ocean?
Resilience. I would say resilience. But I also say again, like, should we have had to be this resilient? No. But it does stand as a testament that after 400 or 500 years, we're still doing these things. We're still living in that culture that was very much tried to be torn from us. Right.
Yeah. All right. I got everything. That was beautiful. Thank
you. The women in prison held me together. They braided my hair when I couldn't lift my arms. They sang to me when I couldn't sleep. Some had nothing, but would still tear their bread in half and give me the bigger piece. They taught me that the revolution isn't always marching or shooting. Sometimes it's wiping another sister's tears. Sometimes it's laughing when everything in you wants to give up. Sometimes it's surviving one more night.